Hello everybody and welcome back to the Code Wrinkles channel for a new video. This time we'll talk about a new cool feature in Blazor WebAssembly, and this is lazy loading. This feature was highly awaited because it allows us to greatly improve the performance of our Blazor WebAssembly applications, of course, because right now we're starting with .NET 5. We can defer the download of some DLLs until the time that we really need it. But let's get right into it and let's say how we can implement lazy loading in Blazor WebAssembly. What we see here on screen is once again the standard .NET 5 Blazor template, which includes the already very well-known app that has a counter, a homepage, and a fetch data component that actually grabs some information about weather. So what we'll try to do right now is to try to actually move this fetch data part, or this weather, from this Blazor WebAssembly application into another Razor class library. And of course, when we execute the application, we just want to defer the download of the new project actually, or the new DLL that we will create for this new feature, or for this fetch data feature. So let's get right into it. First of all, we will create a new project here, of course, and we'll use here a Razor class library project because this is how we create reusable Blazor components. So let's click here on next and let's name this weather, or let's name this Blazor weather. And this project gets created, Razor class library. This is exactly what we want to create. And I guess it was already .NET 5. Good. So this is what we get right out of the box when we create a new Razor class library. These two components, we really don't need them, or the component and the code file. That this is something that we don't need. And as said, once again, we just want to move the fetch data component from this app here, from our Blazor app, to this Razor class library. So let's try to do this. And first of all, what we will do is we'll simply move this. We'll take it with copy and we'll paste it here. And let's paste it directly in the project. Where do I have it here? Paste. Let's have it pasted. So here is what we have right now. Of course, the problem is that there are some components, or there are some namespaces that we still need to import in order for this to work. So in order to do that, let's go here to imports, the tracer, and let's import some things. First of all, we would need to import system.net.http. And then we need to import system.net.http.json. And after we did import this, if we go back to this fetch data component, what we'll see here is that, everything is okay right now. So we don't have any errors in this component. Everything is right here. Now, there is one other thing that we need here. In the Blazor WebAssembly app that we have as a standard template, the data for the weather is actually read from a file which is located under www root sample data, and we have this weather JSON. This is actually the file, or the weather forecast is actually read from this file exactly. It's not a real HTTP call over the network, but instead it just reads a JSON file that resides on the server that serves the Blazor WebAssembly app. And of course, what we want to do here is to also move this file to our new Razor class library, because this is how a class library would be supposed to work. And right now in this Blazor standard template, this weather forecast component is a very, very simple one. But if we think about the functionality in a real life application, if we would like to implement something like that, that would be something more sophisticated with a lot of HTTP calls that we would have to make probably to third-party APIs, we would have probably a bunch of different separate components for adding things, for updating things, displaying different things with paging, with sorting and things like that. So it actually makes sense that we would like to move this type of functionality into a separate DLL that we can lazy load when it is needed and not before. So let's just also copy this file and we'll paste it in the www root folder. And that is actually very, very important. And if you're not very familiar with Blazor, the idea is that if you use a Razor class library, which is essentially a reusable Blazor component or reusable Blazor components that are actually bunched up together into one DLL. And the idea is that, of course, if you have components, you also have static files. So what happens when we will run this project is that, of course, we would reference this Blazor weather DLL in our Blazor lazy loading app. And when this happens, what actually happens at compile time or at build time, sorry, is that all the contents that we have here in the class library in the www root folder are actually placed in another folder in the www root of this app at build time once again. And that folder is called _content, and afterwards the name of this DLL. So this means that when we build everything together, it means that this file will actually be copied to this www root folder that we see here under the _content folder. Now, the only thing, or there are two things that we still need to do here, and I guess you can't see everything right now, so let me move my camera away just for a few seconds. So one thing that we have to do right now here is we have to make sure that actually this weather.json file is actually shipped every time we want to, or every time we run a new build. So we'll just right click it, and under properties, we'll have this copy to output folder, and here we'll use copy always. And of course we can hit Ctrl S to save things. So this is one very important thing that we did, and we needed to do that, otherwise this wouldn't work. And then the other thing that we would have to do is, if we look into this fetch data component, we see here that when we actually want or use this HTTP client to get this information or to read this information from this JSON file, we actually instruct it to read it basically from the www root folder. But in this case, since we moved the file to the new Razor class library, the folder or this file will be located in a total different folder. So this is why we would have to change things here. And what we'll do here instead is we will say that, okay, we want to read the data from the folder that is called _content, and then the name of our project, which is Blazor weather. And that should actually do it. So right now, I guess that we are done with our class library. So this is actually everything that we need to do in the class library. So let's just do a rebuild to make sure that everything works fine and everything is tied up together correctly. And I will also move my camera back to the corner because we don't need to look at those properties anymore. And it seems that everything runs correctly. The rebuild was successful. So right now what we can do is we can move over to this Blazor lazy loading app. This is a Blazor WebAssembly template from Visual Studio directly. Now, one thing that we can do here to just make sure that when we want to fetch data, we actually don't fetch the data from this app is we'll simply delete this file. Because we don't need this fetch data component anymore in the Blazor app, because it will be or will actually use it from this Razor class library. So this is a first thing that we need to do. Then another very important thing is, and this regards actually the way that this lazy loading feature works in Blazor on .NET 5, is that we will have to actually tell Visual Studio or tell the build engines that would build this solution eventually that, hey, we have some projects, of course, that are actually used for lazy loading. So we have to mark them for lazy loading so that Visual Studio or the build engines would know that, okay, we want to lazy load these DLLs. But before we actually do that, one thing that we would need to do is here add a reference to this project. So let's right click this dependencies and let's add project reference. And of course we want to reference this Blazor Weather project. And this of course has created a new item group in the CS profile. And here what we will do is that we will create a new item group. Okay, so this item group, we will actually here use Blazor. Let's Blazor WebAssembly lazy load. And Visual Studio does here this incorrectly because this actually doesn't have a closing tag. We actually have to close it like that. And here, of course, we need to specify the include. And here we just say the name of the DLL that we want to include or that should be lazy loaded. And in this case, the DLL will be Blazor weather.dll. So Blazor weather.dll. So that should actually do it. Okay, so we are done with the CS profile. So the next thing that we would need to do in order to implement lazy loading is, well, to specify the Blazor router or to tell the Blazor router that, hey router, we might have some components, even routable components, that are actually not part of this application, but are part of some external libraries or other DLLs that we might use in order to lazy load. And this is actually what we have to do right now. So let's go here to this app.blazor. Let me just make this just a little bit bigger. Okay, so in this app.blazor, we have this router component, which actually does the routing in Blazor. Now here, what we want to do is actually here on the component itself, what we want to specify, first of all, is that what we want to do here is router. Let's just go where this should be. We should specify that additional assemblies, and here we'll specify lazy loaded assemblies. This is actually, or this will be a field that we will create in the code of this component. So right now we have, of course, an error for that. And let me actually go down with this because we just need to add something else. And then what we have to do is hook actually into this on navigate async method, and we'll say on navigate async. So what we actually do here is we specify a callback actually for this event. So when a navigation event occurs, what we want to do is, hey, we want to call this method. And of course we have to implement everything here. So let's add the code part. And first of all, what we would need to do is we will need a list of assembly. And this list of assembly will be called lazy. Let me make sure lazy loaded assemblies equals new list of assembly. Of course, we will have to also add the namespace here. Let's get here. So we will have using system.reflection, because this is where this class actually resides. So this should be fine. Now then we would have to implement this on navigate async method. So we will have this private async task on navigate async. And the cool thing about this on navigate async event is this, that actually in the callback, it will actually push us or send us a navigation context. And let's call this, of course, context. Okay, and here is actually where we want to implement some stuff. So first of all, we would implement something very, very easy for the logic here. And we'll say that, for instance, if context.pet, and let's have starts with, and it should start with fetch data, of course. Then what we want actually is to load or lazy load the necessary DLL files. So to do this, to do this, we actually need to inject a service in this component, which is actually responsible in Blazor on .NET 5 for calling or for lazy loading the DLLs that we need. So let's inject, and that service is actually called lazy assembly loader. Lazy assembly loader, and let's call it assembly loader. So that should actually do that. Of course, we would probably have to also import a certain namespace, and this service is actually located in Microsoft.ASP.NET Core.components.WebAssembly, and then services. And that should do it. So right now everything should be fine again, so we shouldn't have any errors right now. So it means that we actually can use this service that we inject right here. We can use it, of course, here in our onNavigate async method to actually specify which DLLs we want to lazy load. If, of course, the navigations or the path or the navigated path starts with fetch data. So we say here var assemblies equals, and here we'll see await assembly or how did we call this service? Assembly loader. So that should be okay. That's exactly the name that we need. So let's paste it here, and then of course in this service we have this load assemblies async method, and in this method we need actually to pass a list of string that would represent the names of the DLLs that we want to lazy load right now, for instance. So let's just do it like that. So we provide a new list of string, of course, with no typos, and this list of string will contain actually only one DLL name, and that one would be Blazor weather.dll, and hopefully I don't have any errors here. Okay, of course I have here a typo, which actually makes this everything a problem, but right now everything is correct. So when we corrected the typo, everything should work fine. And right now that we have actually created, or we have defined or told Blazor WebAssembly, hey, we need these DLLs right now, and we have them in this variable after this task actually completes, what we can do here is lazy loaded assemblies.add range, because they could be more. In our case it's only one, but they could easily be more. It would be assemblies. That's the name of our variable, and that should actually do it for this router. So right now, let's do a short recap of what we have done. So first of all, we have created a new Razor component or a new Razor class library, and we have moved the fetch data part, that weather forecast part, from the Blazor web app into this Razor class library. And we have moved it also with this file weather.json. And this is how we actually have moved a part of the functionality from the template app into a dedicated Razor class library. Then we actually moved on to our Blazor WebAssembly app and we did a few things. First of all, we did reference the project where we have moved our functionality. And then we have added here in the CS profile an item group that actually says, we have some DLLs that we actually want to lazy load. We have marked these DLLs for lazy loading, and that actually does it. And then, of course, in the app.razor, where we have our routing component, first of all, we needed to add 2 namespaces and to inject this lazy assembly loader service. And then we have specified to the router that, hey, if you don't find a route, for instance, then just go ahead and also look into this lazy loaded assemblies. Maybe you find it there. So the router would then, of course, go into this lazy loaded assemblies and look for a component that has a route towards which the user wanted to navigate. And then further, we also say that when a navigation occurs, then please just call this on navigate async callback, where we actually instruct Blazor that, hey, we just want to download a DLL right now, not before this. And then, of course, we add this DLL to the lazy loaded assemblies. And actually, that is all. This should actually work right now. So let's just hit a rebuild to make sure that everything works fine. But I guess it should work without any further problem. And then we just want to run the application and make sure that this is actually working. And then we will see actually Blazor lazy loading in action. Once again, lazy loading is a new feature in Blazor that shipped with .NET 5 during .NET Conf November 2020. So let's run our application. This is our browser. And of course that I have run Blazor apps before. So right now, if we load applications, or if we load this application, we see that it is here. But if we go to the dev tools, let's try to actually dock this away. Where is it here? Dock. Okay, so if we go here under network, we'll see that where is it? If we do a refresh right now, so let's go back here. We see that there aren't actually any DLLs loaded, and this is actually because, as said, some of the DLLs are already cached here in Google Chrome. But if I copy this link and then I say, for instance, that I want a new incognito browser, and before we actually navigate to this, let me just also open the developer tools right here. And let's take a look into what will happen if we navigate to this one. So if we navigate here, we see that actually we loaded a lot of files, a lot of DLLs. But if I'm not mistaken, I don't see actually any Blazor weather DLL right here. So it's actually not loaded so far because we haven't navigated to the fetch data component. So let's clear all this network traffic and let's navigate to fetch data. And here, sorry, there's nothing to this address, so we might have a problem right here. And indeed, something happened. Let's see if everything is correct. So we have here fetch data. Did we maybe do a typo in our Blazor app? Let me briefly check this. So let me go back here. Did we do a typo somewhere? Let me check this. So in fetch data, if we navigate to fetch data, then that should be okay. Okay. And if we go then back, let's actually go here. Let's once again go here in this index.razor, for instance. or not in the index, we need to go to the nav link to make sure that everything is correct there. So shared, nav menu, and let's look here. We have here the navigation to fetch data. So actually everything should be fine. So let's just right now look once again into where we could find this problem. So let's instead look again into this on navigate async and into our router component. So this one is correct because we can see that IntelliSense already tells us that it gets or sets the collection of additional assemblies, and on navigate async is also correct. But then here I have a typo, of course. I'm the master of typos, I guess. So it's fetch data, and right now it should work. So let's do it again. So let's try to run the application again. We will do exactly the same. We'll first actually take this URL, and we'll open a new incognito window. And let's open the developer tools. Let's go to the network part and let's see what happens. So if we actually run this, it should load our home page. We see here a bunch of different stuff that gets loaded, Blazor lazy loading, Blazor WebAssembly and things like that, but there is no Blazor weather here at all. So let's just clear that. Right now, actually, it remained on loading, so let's refresh that again. Not sure exactly why that happened, probably a problem with the debugger. Let's clear this once again, and let's navigate right now to this fetch data. So right now we got the data, and what we see here is that when we navigated, actually we loaded the necessary DLL and of course this weather.json file. So you see that this is how actually Blazor lazy loading, or how lazy loading works in Blazor WebAssembly. Because right when we clicked on the part of the application where we needed that specific DLL, only in that moment actually we did download that DLL, including of course all the other static files that we would need. In this case it was this weather.json, which is very, very, very important. And this is actually how lazy loading works in Blazor WebAssembly on .NET 5. This being said, thank you very much for watching, and if you did enjoy this video, please don't be shy and hit the like button and subscribe to this channel right now if you think that you like this content, because similar content will follow soon. And you also get a lot of plenty of videos that we already have on this channel. And if you think that others might find this content interesting, once again, don't be shy and share this content among your peers on your social network and things like that. That would be highly, highly, highly appreciated. This being said, thank you very much for watching, and until the next time, I wish you the very best.